Right. Well, good morning or good afternoon to all of you. We're going to get started right now. On behalf of library makers, I would like to welcome you to the Storytime Tinkering Book Club. If you have attended before, welcome back. If this is your first time here, glad to have you. My name is Karen, and I'm a librarian from the San Diego Public Library. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the library makers community. It's a community that connects and supports library staff from all over the country in libraries big and small who are at all different points in their maker journey. Whether you're just getting started or you have been making for many years, we invite you to ask questions and to share your experiences on our librarymakers.org platform. And now I'd like to pass it over to the incredible team at the Tinkering Studio, an R&D laboratory for creative learning at the Exploratorium, a museum of science, art, and human perception located in San Francisco, California. All right, I'll hand it off to you, Steph.
Thanks so much, Karen, and thank you all for joining today. So we wanted to just start by saying again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're a nice small group in the room today, so we can keep it really casual. And we know some people will be watching after the fact, but the theme of today is really, we would love to see and hear what you're working on, and that can be right now, but that can also be afterwards. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael to just explain a little bit about who we are and what the Exploratorium is.
Perfect. Thanks, Steph, and great to see everyone. So yeah, as Karen mentioned, we are from the Exploratorium, which is a museum of art, science, and human perception. We're located along the bay in San Francisco, and I hope that if you haven't been able to visit us yet, you are able to come and do so sometime soon. And please let us know if you do come. We'd love to meet you. We are a museum that really focuses on this idea of human perception, how we can perceive things and interact with things. So we are a very hands-on space where people of all ages get to interact with all manner of different phenomena. Within the wider Exploratorium Museum, Steph and I are part of a team called the Tinkering Studio that focuses on tinkering. And tinkering to us is a pedagogical approach. It's a way of engaging with different types of phenomena to build your own meaning and engage in making meaning and meaning making. And so within the Tinkering Studio, which is a physical space, but also forms of pedagogy of our team, we engage in a lot of research and development of tinkering experiences. We facilitate them and we love to disseminate, which is kind of something that we get to do right now. And we get to bring you into that R&D kind of space around tinkering with books and literacy and narrative. And I think I'll leave it there. I'll pass it back to you, Steph.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So we also just wanted to share a little bit about the idea for this book club. It really is an experiment, so thank you for joining us, and thank you to those of you who are joining us for multiple sessions. I see at least one familiar face, I think a couple. So the premise for this book club is really that we know people have different entry points to these hands-on making and tinkering activities, and books can be this really inviting way in. Creating stories and telling stories and hearing stories just can be such a powerful entry point and a familiar entry point for a lot of people. And so when we think about lowering the floor for some of these activities, we're just very aware that books have power, and we're interested in continuing to explore how we can use them in these making and tinkering settings. And so for the book club, we're interested in this idea of multiple literacies. So combining reading literacy with materials literacy, which is something in tinkering we think a lot about, like feeling well versed with materials, getting to know them and what they can do. And then also bringing in digital literacy. So what happens when you tinker creatively with code? So that's the general idea for this book-based tinkering experiment. And so today what we're hoping to do is to look back and take on this theme of light and shadow. So we had introduced the idea of tinkering with light and shadow with different books, see what anybody has been working on, hear some ideas for what might be possible and favorite book connections. And then we're going to take some time to just open this up, because this is the last of these 3 sessions. So we're hoping to hear from you too about what are some other books that might be interesting. We already have ideas in the chat. What are ways you maybe have already tinkered with books in your own space, in your own practice? But it'll be a pretty, low-key casual session today. So with that, I would love to just go around and do a round of intros so we know who's in the room. It would be great to hear your name and where you're joining from, and also just what brought you to the session today, whether that's an interest in books or tinkering or neither, and it's something else. We would just love to get a sense of that. And I'm happy to start. So I'm Steph. I work at the tinkering studio at the Exploratorium. And I am just really, really interested in, I love books, and I'm really interested in how we can use books in creative ways and use them in conjunction with tinkering. And I'll pass it to Casey.
Hi, thanks, Steph. My name is Casey Federico. I am a teacher in San Francisco, mostly working with toddlers and preschoolers. And I am really interested in sort of books that because I work a lot with other educators, thinking about how using a book makes it comfortable to go into a tinkering activity, particularly for teachers who are not as comfortable with science or not as, I think a lot about math too, like how does the book give us the language we need to then feel really comfortable jumping into the activity? And so that's an entry point for me. And then today I get to share with you in particular an activity that I was part of with cardboard and not a box. So I'm excited. And then I will pass to Michael.
Thanks, Casey. So I'm Michael with the Tinkering Studio. I'm a museum educator here on site. I am really actually kind of coming off what Casey was just saying. This idea of multiple entry points into an experience is something we talk about a lot as in like tinkering pedagogy. And I think that books are a really, really lovely way into exploring a whole range of different things, whether that's a phenomena, whether that's storytelling. And so that's something I'm really excited about with this network. And with that, I might pass to Trisha.
Hello, I'm Tricia Hutcherson from the Oklahoma Department of Libraries. I'm the Youth Services Consultant, and I came to this just because I love intersecting literature with making and tinkering, building, and all of that with kids. So trying to build our programs in Oklahoma for that. Oh, let's see. I will pass to Pamela.
Hi, everyone. Pamela here. I'm one of the creators of the Library Maker community, so I'm really delighted to see you here, and I hope you find this to be a helpful place to talk to folks. I just think that without a means to an end of learning science or anything, that we understand our world through stories and through exploring and touching things through our senses. And so, you know, I'm an old lady, but I still explore my work, and any have to do that in a way that's a little bit less boring than our daily work life, I am there for it. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to keep us playing no matter what age we are. And I'll pass it on to Trisha.
I think Trisha already went, if you want to choose.
I'm sorry, Joanna.
Oh.
Did Joanna go?
Hey.
Just look.
No, I haven't gone. Hi, I'm Joanna. I'm a youth services librarian at San Francisco Public Library. And I love the idea of STREAM, which is STEM, reading, and art. And I'm about to do 5 weeks or once a week thing with team volunteers and a summer program. And so I'm combining STEM with reading and art, and I just want more inspiration because I've always loved having books combined with programs that I do around that. So I'm here to get even more inspired.
Oh, you're muted, but I see you passing it to someone.
Yes, sorry, I muted and before who's left? Lanisha?
You're also welcome to introduce yourself in the chat if that is more accessible today, because I know some of you might be staffing a desk or running around in other ways. And if Lanisha, if you're not available, we could see Ashery. Are you available to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ashton Shirey. Sorry I don't have my video on. I'm gonna have to leave probably in 4 minutes. I've been so sad to miss these, but I am the Academic Technology Integration Specialist at St. Stephen's Episcopal School down in Bradenton, Florida. And actually the library makers was sent to me from our media specialist. And I know our younger media, we're a 3-year-old through 12th grade school. And I know our younger media specialist is interested more. We're doing a STEAM push. And so we're in the middle of a capital campaign to build a STEAM center and to grow our STEAM programs. So that way we can give another place of belonging for our students. And so we're just looking to see what that's like and get ideas. And I know our media specialist in the lower school is really excited about it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I see Pamela added the links to the previous session recordings in the chat. I'm also going to just add, we'll share our information at the end of this, but if you are trying stuff out and want another thinking partner in it, please just let us know. That's my email, and we would love for all of you to just keep us posted about what you're thinking about. But that programming coming up sounds really cool. And I don't know, Karen, do you want to do you have anything to add about what brought you to the session? I know you already did an intro, but.
Just like what everyone said, every time I go away from these sessions, I just become more inspired. It's just great to like be in community with people who love books and making and creativity. So thank you all.
And Jonna, thank you for introducing yourself in the chat. I like hearing about your preschool STEAM program. So with that, for today, we have been tinkering with light and shadow. We introduced some ideas last time, and then today we'll introduce some more ideas. And maybe to kick us off, we'd just love to hear if you've been working on this in any way. We would love to see what you've been trying. Karen, would you start us off? I know that you've been doing some light and shadow tinkering.
Oh, sure. So when I heard about this theme, my mind kind of honed in on lanterns, like as as part of that. Um, so I actually chose a book. It's called Thanking the Moon by Grace Lynn, and it's about the Mid-Autumn Moon Festival. So lanterns are a big part of that festival, and it happens in like mid-September, October, and a lot of Asian cultures celebrate this festival. So I actually did a little story time again with our interns who are young adults. And again, they love to be read to. So that just goes to show at any age, people love to be read to. They love to hear stories. So I'm going to share what we did. So let me share my screen. So here's the book. And we kind of looked at different lanterns as well. Like there are more the traditional lanterns, lanterns that are animal designs that you see at festivals, see DIY designs made from paper. And really, I just gave them a design challenge. I said, here's a tea light, a skewer that you can use as a handle, and you can use whatever materials you find in our maker space. It can be traditional or just something that brings you joy. So our two interns, they created these two lanterns here. They had a lot of fun making it and, parading it around. So this one is our elephant lantern. Our intern actually hand cut this vinyl of this elephant and then stuck it onto her lantern. So it made this cool like elephant shadow. And so when it's kind of swaying, the elephant shadow kind of looks like it's dancing. And then this lantern is our heart lantern. Sometimes you can kind of see the hearts making the shadows, or the heart making light shadows. And then we commented on how actually the color of the paper helped make the light a different color as well, and how it shines differently. And then these are two other ones made out of paper. The left one's made out of paper. It's kind of like a weird cat creature, but with the slits in the paper, it kind of makes the light have more of a different shape. It looks like light rays, kind of. And on the right, it's a ode to books. So it's more of an abstract design with just paper shapes and like paper spines. It looks like book spines. So just different silhouettes you can make when you put it around the light. So that's what we did with our light and shadow. Just a simple open-ended project that we just had fun with and just had a lot of fun figuring out like, oh, what do we want? How do we want the materials and light to interact together?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Karen. And also to say welcome to those of you who are just joining us now. It's a great time to join us because we're just getting into some of the projects. So Karen was just sharing some book-based tinkering ideas with those beautiful lanterns. And I'm wondering, I'm going to ask if you just joined, will you just introduce yourself in the chat and tell us a little bit about where you're from and what brought you here today? Because it would just be great. We're a nice small group, so we can keep it casual. But yeah, does anyone have thoughts or reactions to Karen's lanterns before we keep going with other light and shadow examples?
Karen, I like how you added that extra layer looking at the shadows, because I've seen librarians make lanterns and then you're all excited, but just, I love how you can layer and make more complex a project depending on context or who you're working with. And that's a perfect example of just adding that extra dimension to make it even more special and unique.
And were you using those tea lights as light sources?
Yes. Yeah, that was like one component that I said that they can build their little project around. But yeah, it's a nice light. So when I got it, I didn't know they flickered. So I kind of liked that effect on it.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. Has anyone else been tinkering with light and shadow in books in a way that they would like to share with the group today? It doesn't even have to be something you tried. If you just had an idea that you didn't get to test out yet, that's okay too.
I did some tinkering. And I gotta say, I was distracted during the whole thing because I'm still playing with my Octo Studio well in this session. But I have this book. Can you see it? The Blue Table. And Blue Table is a gratitude gathering around the dinner table, but part of it shows you're gradually getting all the things ready for the, and then there's these candelabra on the table. So what I was doing was making a sprite with the candles being lit. And then when somebody said time, I was having a plate of spaghetti being set down on the plate, and then the candles lighting up with a glow, like, and switching the sprite out. So I was working on it. It's not perfect yet, but that was the idea, just taking this excuse for all the cool things on a dinner table and then candles light up. So
do you have the project in a way that you would be willing to share the work in progress version, or?
Yeah, let me see. I think I have to join from my phone. Is that really the best way? So maybe I have to connect with you in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Because I just with the sessions. Let's see.
Let's see.
Joanna has their hand raised.
So a while back in an outreach we did, my coworker was doing glow in the dark Play-Doh. And so I'm gonna use it with this summer program, and I grabbed all the glow in the dark books that I could find in the system. to have around, and talk about like the reaction of doing the glow in the dark. The kids are gonna get a list of the books and the recipe to do Play-Doh. And then we'll have flashlights and stuff like that. Kids love that stuff. They go crazy with it. So that's what we're gonna do. But I'm curious, like for example, for the lantern thing and stuff, how do you, obviously, I mean, we all practice kind of beforehand, but how long will it take for you to, like, do you read the book like 5-10 minutes and then do the activity for like maybe 30 minutes or so?
So for mine, yeah, I did a little before reading the book. I just talked a little bit about the holiday just to give a little scaffolding first. Then I did the actual book, and then gave some direction, showed my own examples to give people an idea of what to do. And then I actually gave them about 20 minutes to do it, but they are like, we need more time. So I adjusted it to 30 minutes. But that's generally how I have done story time or lessons with activities. But I do try to build in some flexibility with it, especially with the making, because sometimes you're not sure of the level that the patrons or the attendees are. So you kind of have to like plan out like, oh, how do I level it up or level it down?
And my internet cut out, so I'm sorry if this is redundant, but I love that question. And this is something that we were talking about too, is in terms of reading a book, like, do you read the whole book? Do you show a few pages? Like, what is the amount of using the book to introduce something that feels welcoming and like a way to get started, but you're not spending the whole time reading? So it's a good question, and I'm glad you're bringing it to the group. So if other people have ideas too, or if you end up testing something out, please report back.
Hi, this is Debbie from the Witherly Memorial Library. Hello, it says Nick Berry up there. My camera's not coming on right now, but I think it depends on the book. So I've done some things from a lot of your earlier things at the Exploratorium on light, and I put together a box. It's called Play with Light, and it can be checked out at the library. So it is a flashlight and one of those plastic strawberry containers, different things that light can go through. But I read the first one I think I did was The Bear's Shadow, just talking about light and shadow, and we did it with ourselves. So I read the whole book for that one. And I think mostly, I don't know, I found that worked well. But I think it depends on the book and how it fits with what you're doing. So, and I did this with really young children. I'm the one who said in my new community technology. So the idea of Octo Studio for the parents in my community is they would prefer not to have their kids on devices, which is new for me. I understand that. I think it makes a lot of sense, but I'm also have come from a place where I was library media specialist before, so we did a lot of that. So this has been challenging for me to try to not use that. And so I've been first one, I didn't come to the second one, but we actually made buttons and stuck them around the library, and we pushed them and then had things happen. So I immediately wanted to go to the Octo Studio, but I knew that it wouldn't probably go over big right now. So it's something to work on for me here. We're a small little community. Sorry it took so long, but.
No, thank you so much for sharing those insights. First of all, I would love to see what is in your checkout box of light and shadow. If you can at some point share a picture to the Library Makers platform, that would be so cool.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think that question of how technology is perceived is one that a lot of us bump up against, because like so often technology is just passive and you're watching. I was recently in a conversation with Celeste actually, where someone brought up this idea that watching a YouTube video and working on an Octa Studio project might look kind of the same, and one is super active and creative and one is really passive. So I think that's another good question to bring to this group and just to think about together.
Has anyone else had similar problem, or not problems, but
Deborah, one thing it makes me, we got you in and out for a second there, but one of the things it makes me think about is how to design, particularly if families are coming to the library for the social time and the connection and the hands-on activity, is then Octo Studio something that is supported or offered as the follow-up or the take it home or the do it somewhere else piece? Because I can imagine very much as a parent sort of feeling like, this is my moment for my kids to be connected and with others and touching things and doing something real and off the screen. But then as a follow-up to the experience, could that be the Octa Studio element of it, So thinking of myself as a person with young children during the pandemic at home and sort of treasuring those moments when we were actually out and doing something and off the screen, and then letting the follow-up be something that was on screen, just as a wonder piece I wonder about.
yeah, I think that makes sense. And maybe that's what people react to too. Or my fear was that, do they get away and think, oh, it's not that it's difficult, but maybe the kids would be more intuitive for children than it is for the parents to look at how they're going to use it creatively. So it'd be nice to do both, what you said, Casey, to have maybe a demonstration of it, and also, if you had the time, to also have the hands-on activities as well.
Yeah, it's a really nice idea. And thinking about the examples in this space, like what are the kinds of examples that make this feel like something different than other forms of using technology?
I was thinking, I used to be a school librarian with a makerspace, and we had a lot of digital citizenship and digital safety and these kind of tutorials and supports for families and for parents to make really wise decisions about which technology should Mike. I mean, I don't want to have no technology at all. That was very rare. So to offer something that you feel like, here's a great option. Your kid wants to be on the phone or the iPad, but there's so many things we really shouldn't have them do. And we want to give you a constructive, creative, good formative toy. And so offering that as a librarian, I really think that's part of the librarian's role as well, like good digital decision making and media choices. So I feel like that could be another entry point for getting involved with Octo Studio as well.
And Pamela, do you have your Octo Studio project queued up now, or is it?
I think I'm gonna join on my phone. You know what? And I need your advice, because I don't I want to know how to swap a sprite with another sprite. And I think I just couldn't figure it out. So, but I don't want to echo my voice of this, so I'm gonna turn my voice off in this one.
Oh yeah, good idea.
And then I have to share my screen. Which actually on my phone. I don't know how to share my screen on my phone.
And I'm trying to remember. I don't know easily.
Oh, I found it. Okay.
So I think you can see my screen and then
Right now we can't yet.
okay, hold on a second. Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, I can see, is there anyone else who is doing some tinkering with light and shadow who wanted to share what they were working on? We have some stuff too, so it's okay. Yeah, and I'm happy if it's easier, Pamela, we can start by sharing some things, and then if it's easy to set up, you also could always hold your phone up. It's not as elegant as what you're trying to do, but it would still give us a little peek at your project.
It's telling me I'm clicking start my broadcast. 3, 2, 1.
Hey.
Do you
Oh,
see
yeah.
it?
Yeah, I
Yay!
see it.
Hey. Okay,
Nice.
let me see if I can go to Octo Studio now. So I was having, here's where, can you see, I have the picture of the book open and it shows the table.
Ah.
And some of the sprites I have is I have this spaghetti. I also have this candelabra, but I had a candelabra. I took it off of there now, goodness gracious, without any flames on it. I was trying to have the candelabra with no flames, switch out to the candelabra with flames. And then when I say, here,
How about some candlelight?
how about some candlelight? Then the candles will go on. And then when I tap this,
How about some candlelight?
Dinner time goes over to the guy's plate. So I was just playing around with that and seeing if I could get an order of things happening and glow the candles. But I wasn't sure how to swap one for the other. That's the one control I wasn't sure how to do. Anyway.
Yes. To have like one, you're asking to swap it in the middle of the program, to have it go from like no light to light, right?
Exactly. So I made a sprite by drawing, and I can show, what you do is I took a picture from the book, and then I traced with my finger the candelabra, but I didn't trace the flames part. Then I made a second sprite by tracing the whole thing. So I had 2 versions, and I was going to have one swap out for the other, and then suddenly a glow happened. But I couldn't figure out that swap part, if that was something I could do. Anyway, that's what I was just playing around with.
Yeah, it's really lovely just immediately to see the book spread with the sprites that you created from the book. There's just something immediately very inviting about it. And then
And the spaghetti is part of Octo Studios mix. So I used one of theirs, but then I had created this plate. This plate is also a sprite, because I was thinking, oh, maybe this guy's hand will put the plate down, and then the spaghetti will show up, and then the lights will go on, and I was going to have dinner music. I was going to put the whole thing together.
And that question of like switching, it's kind of like switching costumes in Scratch. I know in Octo Studio, it's not the same. And so the way that I've solved it in the past has been to have 2 different sprites and then use the show and the hide. But I don't know if other people have run into this in the past too.
I was trying the show and the hide, and do the 100, you can make something appear 100% or 0. I was going to do that. So that's why I was distracted. I was really trying to get it to work before the session started.
Honestly, it's nice to see your work in progress though, because all of us run into those moments. And so just hearing what you're thinking about and seeing the collage beginning, it's really very good.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Well,
I'm going to go back to my laptop now.
Thanks for figuring out the phone share too. I know.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe with that, we'll share just a few examples of some of what we've been tinkering with light and shadow. And pull this up. So this was the set of books that we were really excited about, and I'm already very happy that you have given us many more recommendations. But some of the books that we really like are on this slide, and we'll share just a few examples of what we've been tinkering with.
Yeah. So one of the books that we have found is a really engaging entry point for light and shadow is called Shadowville. And I think one of the reasons we really like it is because it helps you to start developing or engaging with this conceptual understanding of light and shadows that can be cast. So one of the things that that Karen San Francisco, Tinkering Studio Karen Wilkinson, so many names for Karen, has been playing around with is this setup. And you can see that there are some like paper or cardboard cutouts being held in clothespins, as well as this screen that's been made out of a cardboard box, which has one side cut out, and then a sheet of vellum put in there. But I think you can also use like butcher's paper, or we sometimes use a thin piece of HDPE, which is a piece of plastic if you want it to be a bit more hardy. But in that top right corner, you can see one of the effects that can be created as you shine light from behind that screen. It engages with one of these little characters and then hits that screen. And so if we go to the next slide, Karen has actually done something really cool, and where we often use like a flashlight to create that light source, you can see here Karen is coding a little circle, a white circle on a black background in Octo Studio to become that light source. And this does require quite a dark room or a dark space so that the phone's screen light is going to be bright enough. But the real beautiful thing it allows you to do is Octo Studio is really great for controlling where that circle of white light goes. And so then you can start creating all of these different narrative elements. You know, I straight away am like, oh, well, the sun could come up or the moon could come up. It allows you to change the color of that light source. So it's a really cool way to start playing around with shadows and with light by using pretty basic materials and tools. Another example, this is something I was playing with a while ago, is actually just using a very similar idea of using the phone screen as the light source, but then with different types of paper, in particular magazine paper. The phone screen is actually bright enough to shine through, and your finger can touch through the magazine paper and activate your project. And so this was just a spread I found in a National Geographic of like a library, and I was just trying to highlight different parts of this like magical, amazing like compendium of stuff. So that's another way to play around with Octo Studio and light and narrative entry points.
And not to interrupt you, Michael, but I do want to say I like seeing these now after the conversation we were just having about like how technology looks to parents and shows up in spaces. It is really cool to see examples that are different than what I might expect technology to look like.
Yeah, definitely. Now, with this next example, I do want to invite Celeste if you want to unmute and talk about this. This is a project Celeste made a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I totally forgot about this project actually until you reminded me. So I think what I had done, if I remember correctly, is I used the paint tool in Octo Studio to draw those colorful little blurbs on the screen there. And then I think I just had it doing crazy stuff there in my code, like rotating around in a circle and shrinking and getting bigger and moving over. And I think my process was I just wanted to see what would happen if the lights got bigger or smaller and if they moved around. So this was me just experimenting. And then, yeah, the videos over there, similar to the setup that Michael and Steph just talked about. It's a cardboard box with a sheet of vellum. And then on the inside of that, I don't remember if I turned these around in the video or not. There's just some paper cutouts hanging and creating that sort of moon and stars effect. So I also found having a really dark space is necessary to get a good effect. And I used an iPad for this so that I could have a bigger light source for my project.
Awesome. Thanks
It
a lot.
works so much better than I think it should work.
Yeah, having a dark room is really key. And I think I probably
Oop, you cut out for a second.
Octo Studio.
Celeste, you're cutting out. You cut out for a second. I think you're back now. What was the last thing you said?
Yeah, sorry, my internet's not great here. I think I was just saying if you can make it really dark, that's really helpful.
Definitely.
Thank you for sharing about it.
Yeah.
So there's this other book we really like for light and shadow because it is not a book about light and shadow, and it's called Duck Rabbit. And it's basically this argument back and forth between whether the shape you see on the screen is a duck or a rabbit. And so there's this activity that we do, Shadow Remix, where we invite people to look at the same shadow and reimagine it in different ways. And we just wanted to share, this is an example where different people took the same shadow and then made different projects. And there just can be something really cool about seeing how different people look at the same thing. So this was a shadow of a hand that was cast. We're turning it into a snake. And then, and then
It's for you.
so just like there's something about looking at the same thing and seeing how different people imagine it that can be really lovely. And then Casey had a duck rabbit project too to share.
Yeah, and this is definitely an example, Steph, of you saying, that this is not necessarily light and shadow book. And I've used this book a lot in our STEAM Starters project with young learners around light and shadow. And maybe because I've used that before, I went a different direction with it this time, which was thinking about how could you use Octostudio to sort of express the two different ideas without using words. And so I used, I drew an example of the duck rabbit guy, and it's fun to draw and play with it because you realize like what makes it look real more ducky or more rabbity, and how do you go back and forth. And then just having a tilt, using the tilt feature in Octostudio to go back and forth towards carrot. And when it's at carrot, it makes a little bunny chomping noise versus eating a worm. And this was funny because I was sort of thinking, well, what makes it a duck? And my much more literal nature loving daughter was like, well, it should eat a bug. That would make it a duck, which, wasn't my like story idea, but it was a good thought on that. So that was going back and forth with that. Then if you want to go to the next one, I sort of then was thinking, how do you play on this idea of something being interpreted different ways? And so I used that classic drawing of the bird, whether it's going one way, a sparrow, versus going the other way, being like a goose, to again, just play with going back and forth between the two different ideas. And I felt like this very much was a starter, like wondering where you could start with, and then where much more creative than us children would then take it from there. But just building on that idea of open to interpretation shapes.
Yeah, it's really lovely. I also wanted to share, so this was before Octostudio, we were doing this shadow remix activity, and different people were taking the same shadow of a water bottle. This is like the bottom of a water bottle, and interpreting it in different ways with all different technologies. So this was, people were using like drawing programs like Procreate. We were working with second graders. So on the right-hand side, you can see some of their drawings, and they were using a platform called Sandbox. It was their school platform that had a drawing program as part of it that they were using to make illustrations. And so Octostudio is just the latest of these technologies that could allow for some of this expression. So I wanted to make a project that was using Octostudio with that same shadow. And so this is one where you can like choose which orientation you want the shadow. And I chose this one. And then it was supposed to be like a little skier coming home. But there's also this QR code on the right-hand side. This is another experiment where I put together a starter project that we could work from, and it has these shadows as backdrops already. So if you're interested in remixing this particular project, we would just love to add to the collection and see like, what else do you see in this water bottle shadow that has kind of traveled with us for a while, and now we've experimented with second graders and with adults. And so that is the QR code to that project if you want to join. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Oh, if anybody missed the QR code, I can also put it back up. But so this was our kind of light and shadow share. And with the last few minutes, we would just love to do some brainstorming about other books and other directions that you might be interested in. Yeah.
I just have to share it project that I did at a make-a-thon. This was several years ago, but I think it fits with this. So I quick found the pictures and I'll share that with you. Let me see if I can find. So I was in a make-a-thon with a fellow teacher. This is my daughter, and now she's in college, so you can see how long ago that was. But we created, so we had to build the box theater with the lighting, and then we created fairy tale characters that were like puppets that went inside of it. So and we won like second, third prize or something. But here we are with we made it out of a box and a canvas, and we showed the Three Billy Goats Gruff was the story, and we did a storytelling. We thought, oh, I could bring this to my library and kids could trace or draw pictures out of a story, and then together we could do performances of those stories of our own. So that was one example of something we did.
Oh, thanks for showing us that. It's really lovely. And it also connects. I'm going to ask, Casey, will you share your Not a Box project? Because that's like the Three Billy Goats version. And then even taking a step back, I feel like it's a good fit for this other book too.
For sure. So I have worked for a long time in thinking about cardboard and lead a community of practice with early childhood educators in San Francisco around using cardboard as a medium for exploration. And this is just the book that we come back to over and over and over and over again, the Not a Box book. And shout out to Johanna and the San Francisco libraries. That's available in Korean, it's available in Chinese, it's available in Japanese. So it's like this super accessible, wonderful book. And this is an image from a classroom that did something a little different. I'm very used to classrooms using lots and lots of larger boxes or giving children boxes to use and explore and maybe create a cardboard city or, build off of this. But in this classroom, the teachers, thanks to our local resource, Scrap, they had opportunity to get these boxes and boxes of small cardboard pieces. And as we were playing with them, we realized the small cardboard pieces were actually really similar to Magna-Tiles. And I think that when we think about material literacy, this group of children really knows Magna-Tiles. And so it translated really immediately to them building boxes and eventually homes with these small square cardboard pieces. And so this project has now evolved over weeks and weeks, and they have created an entire, they call it a world, but a city of homes on 2 layers of tables in their classroom. But it's interesting. In some ways, I think that the Not a Box book, while it was interesting and inspiring to the children, it was really interesting and inspiring to the adults in opening up their ideas about what the children might make with the cardboard. And so I would guess that if a child was remembering this activity over many weeks, Not a Box would not be part of their experience. But for the teacher, it was a really primary piece. And for all of us are thinking about, interacting with both adults and with children, I think that's sort of an interesting element, that the invitation to creativity was maybe a little bit more needed for the grown-ups than it was for the children.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Are there other directions and ideas that are coming up for you, or programming is coming up? And alternatively, we also can use this time for questions. Like, there have been some really great ones brought to this group, and there's so much expertise across in this room. So
I'm thinking about, since I'm gonna have teens prep the materials and also coach some of the kids. I'm gonna have around 30 kids from ages 7 to 12 plus 14 interns. I think one of the things I keep thinking about anything like this is effective if there's a lot of questions asked from the audience, so they understand that the process is the learning, and there's no right answer. You're tinkering. So maybe having the teens or whoever, like in the process of practicing, having lots of questions as part of the script as we're doing the tinkering, to spark that imagination and hopefully that independent learning spark. That's my goal for both the teens and the kids. So I'm wondering, what questions do you always like? These are the questions I always have to ask.
Yeah, this is such a good one for the group. And brings up that idea of not just the materials, but what are you doing with the materials and how are you facilitating them? I'm happy to start. I think just like closely noticing what people are doing and really trying to understand their thinking. So asking questions about like, what are they noticing? If they say it doesn't work, asking what they mean by it not working. Those are two I'll start with.
One that comes up for me when I think about that is one of the pieces I have a tendency to, because I'm interested in observing what I'm thinking specifically of the not a box and the cardboard creation, because I'm so interested in what the children are doing, my instinct is to say, what are you making? What are you making? What are you doing? And I have learned over time, even though I have to sort of sit on my hands not to ask that question often is forcing a child to put into words, especially with little ones. You're forcing them to put into words their idea when they're still playing with the idea and the material. And so in a way, this is like a question I don't ask or I wait to ask, because sometimes they're exploring to see what the material is going to do for them, and asking us to add words to it too early kind of puts our agenda.
And I think the same thing can be said when you have parents or caregivers there in the activity. I always try to carefully because those questions will come up from the person. So what are you making? Shouldn't you put this here? What about moving this over here? And that I find I have to be very careful navigating that. I don't really have any words of wisdom that I use, but just I think I try to, what you're saying is make my questions more open-ended when I'm talking to them. And then over time, if they keep coming, I hope they see that how that changes the children's responses, I guess. And the other thing I was thinking of is trying to, when the noticing is so important, because then I look at, well, what other materials do I have around that I could just not specifically say, try this, but then add. That's why it's so important to try these things beforehand. And sometimes I don't always have the time, but I try to play with them first, because then that's where I notice, oh, this, plastic thing that I use outside if I cut that up, I could put that out at some point. Maybe someone would have a use for it because it would work well with this. I was also thinking about balancing. Has anyone done much with that? Because there are a lot of books on balance the cats. There's quite a few little books like that. I'm sort of switching the topic a bit, but that was another thing I wanted to add.
Debbie, can I just echo like that facilitation using materials, like just dropping something off at the table, or like maybe highlighting something, not even verbally, I think is such a powerful way of like showing what can maybe do something in a moment. And also, yeah, definitely echoing the playing yourself just gives you that like ability and experience to then be able to kind of, sometimes it's just empathize, like, yeah, that is a really tough place to be at, or sometimes it is being able to nudge if that feels necessary. But also the balance stuff is, yeah, it's a big part of some of the work that the Tinkering Studio has been playing with that we've also looked at with this group. So I'd love to connect, and we can share more of that either on Library Makers, or feel free to reach out to Steph and I via email. Balance is a really, really rich area that we're still like investigating. We've got some stuff that we've done a few times and we're still interested in riffing on it. So I would love to connect with you about that, and anyone else who is interested.
Like your unstable
Yeah, unstable.
table is the one I've looked at. And I have toddlers and pre-K, and I'd love to try it with them, but I've been playing around with how to make that something that is accessible to them, because I look at some of them, there's where I haven't done enough work to see. It looks like it might be too hard for that age, but I'm not sure of how it's the materials, what materials work for them. I have sometimes a difficulty with that. So I don't know if anyone else has done anything with that.
I used to work at the Bay Area Discovery Museum, which is a museum here in San Francisco area that's for early childhood. And so I was, based on your comment earlier about parents saying things that kind of hinder the creativity, also regarding the balancing, that kind of free play with blocks, you don't have to explain that to little children, and there's a lot of cause and effect happening there with blocks and objects.
That's
so building
right.
things and then seeing them fall down, so easy. But also, the thing that museum did so skillfully that I learned from is signs for parents to read that would say, try asking your child, and then they wrote the question. What do you notice? How does that feel? Different kind of open-ended questions, just posted all over the museum. So if you're having a program with parents and children, you might put up signs, literally say, ask your child this, even say, try asking this instead of this, to educate them without having to say a word, and they'll notice it, and the little kids can't read it. So it really worked well at the museum, and I just think it's a thing that could happen in a library space too.
What is the name of the museum again? I'm sorry.
Bay
you were talking about?
Bay Area Discovery Museum. And it's right at the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge on the Marin side, but it's a wonderful science museum for little children.
Yeah, and just to say too, with those balance activities, I recently was testing a different version of a balance activity with an audience of like toddlers through adults, and it was really cool to see how different age groups interacted with the same material set. So Deborah would love to think with you about adapting materials for younger age groups. I also am watching the time, and I think that we could we're really getting going, which is lovely, but I want to make sure, I know some of you may have to jump off the call, and I want to make sure you know how to keep in touch with us. So we would love to keep thinking with you on this in this way, where it's like a small group of people who have ideas and are testing things out. And so if you would also like to be involved in that, I'm going to put my email in the chat. Just send me an email saying, hey, we'd love to keep on working on book-based tinkering, and we'll let you know what we're working on if we have another kind of group convening like this, because this is the last of this official series, but clearly there's some interest and some really great ideas in this group. So this is my email. Oh, thank you. Michael did it already.
I spelled my email wrong. Isn't that fun?
Michael has a U at the end of his email address to make it a real email. But we would really love to stay connected with you all, and just wanted to say thank you to the Library Makers folks and just to the group of you for joining today. It's been so cool to hear like really good questions and hard questions about how to do these activities that I appreciated hearing your takes on too, because we're definitely learning a lot about this space. And with that, I want to make sure, Karen, do you want to do any wrapping up of the Library Makers part?
Sure. I just want to say thank you all so much for coming today. It was a really great session as always. Great questions, great brainstorming, and of course, just inspired by everybody here today. I put in the chat a brief survey. We would love if you would fill it out. We would love to hear your feedback on today's session and what you're interested in the future. We actually do have let's see, a STEAM Seekers event coming up May 21st. If you want to join that, it's about teaching STEAM concepts with alcohol ink. So it should be a really great hands-on one. You can find that in our events page on the librarymakers.org events page. And yeah, I would love to keep this conversation going about story time and tinkering and all these great questions. So you can always continue that discussion on our network at librarymakers.org in the newsfeed chat. And we have our hashtag Storytime Tinkering, so you can hashtag it that so you can keep all these different threads organized. But yeah, we would love to hear from you. Yeah, that's it from our end. Thank you again. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see everyone.